Mr. Chris.
Yo.
You are a little bit too happy. Can we tone the happiness down a little bit? This is a memorial episode after all.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you're wearing black.
Today we remember the fallen heroes.
Just the one. Not heroes, just the one. Okay.
I don't know. I reckon we've probably made multiple egregores of her by now.
Right, so during the season 2 of the Fausty Witches show, which normally airs live, but that gets we kind of bring it out a little bit like an episode of Old Only Fools and Horses on Christmas, you know? Basically, for our Advent calendar, we take this year's season of Fausty Witches and re-release it an episode a day. Now, originally, when episode 2, I believe it was, came out earlier this year in the year of our Lord 2022.
Which Lord's that?
The Yahweh, of course.
Okay.
The gay Lord. You know? His son used to travel around with a lot of men. Right. During that episode, it was dedicated to someone called Lady Snake. Okay. Lady Snake, the episode was requested by one of our patrons, dear Calypso. Yeah. And she wanted us to talk about Lady Snake, who was some sort of magical practitioner that would be I wouldn't say she was a frequent guest, but she was on that Ghost Adventures program or Ghost Hunters program. She was a Wiccan high priestess, some sort of witch, I do believe, practiced the witchcraft. During that episode,
with your mate Zach Baggins,
talked, yeah, with the Bagginses, yeah.
We
talked a little bit about. We talked a little bit about, what a crappy practice was going on. We weren't that kind, I think, to the people involved in the episode and the practice and such. I think we stand by every single thing that we said. If you want to go and watch that episode, I don't think it's available on YouTube, not because we were nasty, but because we used too much copyright material and YouTube pulled it down and kept removing us when we were trying to live stream it. But you can find it in the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, I believe, Mr. Chris.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, so you can find the original episode. This episode, obviously, we've had to re-record in memory, Chris. Why is this a memorial episode?
Because the Lady Snake did bite the dust.
Our friend that is not a friend that we've never met, but have really capitalized on, probably more so than she has, her name.
Yeah.
The
Mars bars finally got her.
She's passed away. Okay, she dead.
Yeah, Mars bars.
Which is quite a shame, really. I believe that means that any form of rudeness and such would be considered in bad taste.
Maybe, but this is the Fausty Witches show.
It's the Fausty Witches show. I mean, a lot of people, we do have somewhat of a bad reputation on the Fausty Witches show for being ever so feisty and nasty. Why break the habit of a lifetime, Chris? Why break the habit of a lifetime?
Well, we like the Lady Snake for being so terrible.
I don't think she was a terrible person, though, was she? I think we just looked at some of the stuff that was put out in the form of, video content and such, and it did seem not particularly efficient magic. Okay. Now, this episode is going to be somewhat distasteful, I think, for some. And the reason for that is that we have to, because we do talk about really serious concepts and, bits of information and such like that. And there is a number of things that comes up frequently with regards to mundanes and beginners asking questions. And we're going to use this one to illustrate a point, I think. And one of the important points, I think, is that if the person was a magical practitioner, why is it that they then died of an illness? Why could they not prevent it? Because you would think someone that does magic would just light a candle and then it will be gone. At the end of the day, a lot of these people sell products like candle spells and charms and such that are healing candles or healing incense and such. If they can't seem to help themselves, what makes you think that they can help you by giving them, quite frankly, obscene amounts of money sometimes? I mean, we've seen spell candles for sale for healing and love and all that sort of thing, $700, thousands of dollars a time, you know? Why is it that these people can do these healing rituals and yet they don't seem to be able to heal themselves or fix their own issues?
Because she wasn't exactly that old either.
No, I do believe she was struggling with a long-term medical condition. But I mean, I'm not just talking about this one specific person. I'm talking in general magical practitioners.
No, but I think it's a good example of people and how why we talk about quite so frequently about magical practice in terms of, you know, the good old cleanse and grounding. You know, good personal hygiene when it comes to practice is really important. You know, because you can we have talked about it many a times, not just, you know, rudeness aside, the amount of times we talk about going around witchcraft fairs and these kind of psychic fairs and things like that, and see surrounded by people that are, you know, considerably overweight, got lots of kind of medical problems, and that's not just a kind of stereotype. We are talking the majority of them fit that market. You do not see many, you know, skinny, healthy magical practitioners at these kind of fairs.
Not to say skinny is necessarily healthy, of course.
No. I'm not saying you know, I'm not saying particular shape is right. What I am saying is unbalanced individuals who are so-called gifted, because that's the word that's used with those people. I think that the word gifted and these types of people that are unhealthy, unwell, the two tend to go hand in hand, and that normally is because that perspective of psychic gift as gift and not kind of a universal access point that we all have. Some of us come with it unlocked when we arrive. Others have to work really hard to gain it. You know, I think there is that kind of distinction of, because it's viewed in that way, the sorts of practice that should follow with that, the good grounding, the solid practice that should be surrounding psychic use, like psychic awareness, psychic ability, should be surrounded by good practice. Calling it a gift and considering it in that way, that it doesn't have to be tuned or you know, looked after or integrated better with your physical body, then has that knock-on effect of those individuals being unwell and often slipping off the mortal coil much earlier than planned. You know, so there you go. There was my polite conversation about it, followed.
A lot of mundanes ask that question, you know, why is it that witches are poor? If witches can just manifest and flick their fingers and, you know, make magic happen, then why is it they're not all rich? Well, as we all know, the rich witches that want to be rich and are magical, they are rich and magical. There is this bullshit, I think, sometimes that gets pushed out, which is, oh, well, a magical practitioner, they can help other people, but they cannot help themselves, you know. And I think that is an old trope that gets pulled out because they're not that competent, you know. At the end of the day, I would say a con artist, that's the sort of thing con artist would probably say, you know. And I'm not saying all people that don't seem to be able to make magic happen for themselves are con artists. I think there's a lot of people that have been forcibly programmed growing up in some sort of iffy traditions or inheriting some sort of iffy traditions, i.e., being raised magically or being taught by magical practitioners that deliberately or accidentally program their students to think that they cannot make money manifest, that they should not make use magic to fix issues in their life and such. I think that's bullshit. It's complete rubbish. It's not something that we teach. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's magic. If you, right, are name a craft, Chris, name a craft, you know? You say
blacksmithing.
Blacksmithing, right? Blacksmithing. If you're a blacksmith and you need some new gates on the front of your house, are you really saying, oh, I tell you what, I probably shouldn't make those gates. I know how to make that. I shouldn't make those gates. I'll go and get another blacksmith to make them for me. Right, Chris, if you, because you've got a lot of a big background in textiles and stuff like that, if a button comes off of your shirt, do you take it to a seamstress to sew it back on, or would you fucking do it yourself?
I would hope I'd fucking do it myself.
Exactly. Would you, right, if someone gave it all the, oh yes, I'm excellent at sewing, I'm excellent at textiles, I've done this, I've done that, and then you say to them, that button on your shirt, would you judge them for having a dodgy button on their shirt that's hanging on by a fucking thread?
Probably.
Yeah? Would you judge them if they said, well, I'm good at sewing and that, but I can't sew for myself? You would fucking judge them, wouldn't you? Right? Same here, I think. So this person, you know, that we're talking about, Lady Snake, Wendy Binks, you know, God rest her soul and such.
Before you go there, I'm just going to kind of add an additional example. And the other example would be kind of, you know, that warning you get that with the lady in the little tight dress on the aeroplane says, you know, putting your mask on before putting somebody else's in a crisis. You know, that kind of, if you're not looking after yourself, how are you supposed to look after another?
Well, exactly. I mean, if the plane's going down, they do tell you, you put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then you put it on your favorite child, and then if you've got time, put it on your other children. You know, that's how it goes, isn't it? But this idea of magical practitioners and such, I mean, it is a question that some people are uncomfortable with. And we generally have a Fausty reputation, not just because we can be somewhat rude, but honestly, we ask the questions and talk about the subject that make a lot of magical practitioners uncomfortable, you know? And there needs to be a certain amount, I think, of ego, which is a good thing. A lot of people shit on ego and such like that within occultism and witchcraft and magic. There is a good thing about that because ego means I can and I will and I deserve. And you need a certain amount of that to progress within magic. But at the same time, you also need to be, to a certain extent, humble and say and admit, look, I need help with this, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I'm struggling with this. You know, is this potentially an example of a magical practitioner that was a little bit out of their depth when it came to the magic that would be required to fix it? Is it something that actually they planned all along? Maybe they wanted to shimmy off of this mortal coil as quick as possible before the bad stuff starts to happen in the 21st century, because we all know there's some bad things are brewing. Who knows? We don't know. You'll have to conjure up with a Ouija board or something like that. Just make sure you get the correct number. There's a lot of people that use those fucking contraptions and end up getting salespeople. By that I mean crossroads demons, don't I? Salespeople, crossroads demons. I mean, they're all the same thing if you really think about it.
Used car salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's one of those where is it bad practice? Is it lack of knowledge? Are the two the same? Probably not. Is it that she's had a poor teacher or a bad part of a bad group that have not got the experience in order to push her to the next level? Is it she just decided, well, I'll trash this vessel, it doesn't matter, I'll get a new one? Like, I'm not quite sure what the plan was.
There's something to be said for that. I mean, if he plans on coming back, she's comfortable with reincarnation and such, then maybe some people do think, oh, I don't really need to look after myself because I'll just come back for round 2 or 3 or whatever fucking round we're on. So there is something to be said about that. Another thing that's not discussed, which is an interesting point, I suppose it depends. I wonder how many people listening or watching use magic to improve their lives. I wonder if there's any people listening that have tried and failed at it. Room for improvement, perhaps.
Ultimately, what it comes down to is the first thing they all talk about on even the Instagram witches, kind of talk about this manifestation. So in order to manifest something, in the first instance, you've got to believe you actually have the power to, which again goes back to this kind of willpower, this ability to will something into existence. If you don't actually have that belief, we'll go to look at, I imagine, some clips of her later. How much of her practice is petition work? So how much
petition
is that?
Petition work, Chris? I mean, she would never petition, surely, as a Wiccan. The whole practice is not revolving around begging and asking. I mean, maybe for minor things, but I mean, you would never ask for something, I mean, you would never trust someone else to look after every facet of your being, your finances, your health, all of that sort of thing. You'd probably have some sort of input. You wouldn't be asking someone else, to protect you or something like that, would you?
In the name of the god and goddess, please protect Lady Snake.
Well, we know certain people would, but petition work. It seems to be very big in this person's practice, and it seems to be very big in a lot of people's practice. I think that a lot of the time comes from religion to a certain extent, praise and worship of something they expect. If they praise and worship the thing, then that thing will, look after them to a certain extent or grant them wishes and such. I don't think we're very big on that, are we?
Well, no, I think that self-sufficiency is that thing that we hope all witches will develop throughout their practice. And if it's not already in their practice, particularly if they're being mentored by ourselves, that is something that will be forced upon them in that kind of, you will learn self-sufficiency or you will fail at this. That is kind of, and that's not us being particularly harsh. I think that's a standard expectation, is that, which I think is the other part that's forgotten when we come to kind of coven work. And looking at her garb, I will assume naturally that she is used to working as part of a group. That kind of priestess look that was quite popular back in I was assuming, is this one from the noughties?
90s or the noughties?
90s?
Probably in the 90s.
That kind of look that kind of developed from the kind of end of the New Age, kind of beginning of that kind of revival of Wicca in the kind of 90s, that kind of seemed to occur.
The spread. The spread, we call it.
Spread.
The spread of Wicca.
Infestation. That kind of following movies and programs like Buffy, where she described herself as a Wiccan, even though her practice wasn't very Wiccan at all. But the word that was constantly used was Wiccan, in big shows that had quite long running times like that, like Buffy, then reinforced by the follow-up with like things like Charmed. Again, even though their practice isn't Wiccan, they use that word Wiccan to describe themselves all the time, and that kind of look comes very much with that, triple moon on her garb, and the crushed velvet, poly velvet at best. You kind of get that understanding of her practice probably was reliant on a group of individuals. So that people tend to forget, which is the point I was trying to make, is that even as a group, you should have your own sovereignty. You should be able to hold up, you know, what they say, a group is only as strong as its weakest link. You know, that kind of approach should always be met by, could I hold my own? You know, could I actually do this properly? And if all your work is based on calling in elements to set up a space, reliant on elementals and other spirits, that kind of comes from the kind of ceremonial witchcraft kind of slant that was kind of absorbed into the amalgamation of Wicca as a practice. That, you know, my friend Gardner,
Uncle G,
Uncle
Gerald,
you know, dodgy Uncle G. A lot of that is quite clear in the practice. It kind of uses a kind of ceremonial approach to something supposedly organic, like, and has that kind of weird tension between the two things. You know, calling in elements and corners, and all that kind of thing. I always found it hilarious, the concept of corners on a circle, but you know.
Well, quarters turned into corners, didn't it? Because you can put when you cut up a birthday cake, like some of these Wiccans like to, for their leavenses, that can go into a slice, which is a quarter. It's cut in quarters, isn't it? Even if there is merely just the one of them, they will still cut up into quarters. And then I would imagine it turned into corners, but it is what it is at the end of the day. I think with this, what I see is not a huge amount of emphasis on anything deeper or extremely superficial. I don't mean superficial as in superficially interested in the occult, because some of them are really interested in it. I think superficial in the concept of, wait a minute, you're pulling in elemental energy, but just what is elemental energy? How does that affect you? You can see this in a lot of the spell work and ritual work that these sorts of people do, which is, okay, we're doing some sort of clearing or cleansing or something like that. They're very big on cleansing rituals and such. So let's do an elemental cleansing ritual. Well, that often consists of is, let's get something that represents each element and wipe the slate clean. Which kind of makes you think, like, if I've seen Wiccans actually do house clearings and stuff like that to get rid of negative energy, they say, okay, flick the water around the room. There we go. Banish the water. Got the water. There we go. Oh, we need some air. Okay, I'll use some incense for that. Incense. There we go. Oh, we need a little bit of earth. Oh, I've got some salt. If I'm smart, I'll have mixed that with the water and done the water and the earth at the same time, but if not, I'll flick salt around and have to vacuum it up later. And then obviously going on to fire, which, let's be fair, they're always going to go for a candle unless they can't, in which case they'll have to use an LED candle, won't they? That's very extremely superficial, because that's trying to pull in some energies that are already existing. The next step would actually be to think, I'm not calling in any energies. I'm not bothering to. I know they're already here. Instead, I'm just going to tune into them and see what they're saying. You know, what's overwhelming this room? What's overwhelming this person? This person's body. You know, we have that from, you know, healing and such for humors and all that. What is overwhelming this person's body? Have they got a fiery condition? What is going on here? Inflammation, somewhat fiery. Inflammation, fiery. That would be what you would tune into. Oh, there's a lot of fire here. Where's the fire located? The fire is located on the body, and I can see it there and there. Have you got arthritis or something? Oh, yes, I've got arthritis. My doctor told me that. I'm fucked. It's really bad. Yeah, I can see that. I didn't need you to tell me that. I can see that because I can actually see your joints on fucking fire. And it makes sense. But that is diagnosis. That is not superficial magic. That isn't, let's do a generic healing. I'll call in the elements and that. Now, all of things are in a state of balance. So a bit like when you have something, a little rubber ducky, yes, bath time. The Wiccans will understand this, I'm sure. Little rubber ducky floating and bobbing along in the bath water with you, and then you a splash, and the rubber ducky bobs up and down, doesn't it? That's because there's a knock-on effect, you see. You've disturbed from something that you're doing, playing with yourself or something in the bathtub, has made a commotion, and the water's a sloshing around, and the ducky's connected to the water that's a sloshing around because he's a bobbing up and top, and he's bobbing up and down a lot more, right? Knock-on effect. The elements exist in a state of balance, but everything is balanced and therefore both unbalanced. The more you understand the nature of their balance and how they react with each other, the more you can walk into a place and say, there's something fishy here, there's something not quite right about this, and I know roughly what direction to look in, because I know that this place is full of fire, and a specific type of fire. Doesn't take a genius to work out there are different types of fire. Doesn't take a genius to work out there are different types of water or liquid. It's very bad to fill up a glass with brick acid and then drink it. Quite good to fill it up with water and drink it if you're a bit thirsty. Brick acid, not so good. Brick acid, what is brick acid? Some would say that that's water, some would say that's fiery water. Some would say that's some sort of mercurial fiery water in a bad mood. I don't know, but these concepts that would be explained in a book like Agrippa is going to leave a lot of people behind extremely fucking quickly because they're not doing the groundwork that's necessary by sampling the flavors of fire, the flavors of all these different things. At the end of the day, these people are supposed to be learning to cook, Chris, aren't they? They're not learning to follow a recipe. They're learning to actually come up with their own meals.
But a big part of that, like you say, is understanding what is there and what is not, which is why with all our mentees, we start with this scratch testing of knowing exactly what they're capable of, and how best to balance out their obvious overleanings, their imbalances. But that all starts with psychic awareness, and are they able to see what is possible, what is there, and what can be changed. But I don't think most modern practice, because in the politest possible way, most people will have learned from books. They won't necessarily have had a teacher as such, and we all know the standard of books that are out there are not particularly great on the whole. So or they'll have learned from social media, YouTube videos and Insta bitches, witches, that are putting out content which is watered down from something that is already diluted. So, you're not getting it in its rawest sense. We refer to Agrippa all the time, but even that, we both quite regularly admit is an encyclopedia at best. It's just talking through very basic processes and going, okay, well, this is all that exists. But actually, what you're looking at is a Clip Notes version of what is and what is understandable from a very kind of, yes, it's you go through celestial magic, etc., but all of it is very low magic, even the high magic stuff. It is so physically based here, which you would hope would lead to very grounded practice, but actually hasn't done that at all. So moving forward, obviously lots of people are probably thinking we're just slagging off Wiccans here, whereas actually
on a memorial episode, no less.
We are kind of hitting everybody all at once in that kind of general standard that is there. It's actually really the only reason that we even came out of the broom closet for you lot, in order to actually kind of try and hope that you will ask the right questions and move on beyond what is already happening out there, which is not all that impressive.
I mean, a lot of people would, and a lot of people have, to be honest with you, they have said, you know, if you just stopped being rude and nasty, so many people would learn magic, because you do put good content out there, Liam and Chris. You do put good content out there which actually teaches people how spells work, this little bit of history, little bit of theory, little bit of practice, all of that. But you're just so nasty. And this is actually what you're going to learn from the most, you see. That's what you're going to learn from the most, you see. There's a lot of people that we teach that don't like us as human beings and as people. But do you know the reason why they stick to us? Because they've learnt this thing, right? This thing that we've talked about, I think, before, which is the concept of going outside of your fucking echo chamber, going outside of your box, getting stimulation from people that are different from you. And this is the real problem, is that being a little bit different from you, okay, is not going and making friends with the vegan because you're a vegetarian and you click over animal cruelty, although you like to still eat honey, so you can't go as far as veganism yet, but you're working on it. That is still like a very close echo chamber. We're talking about you going to someone that likes to butcher animals and lives on a carnivore diet, right? That is what we're talking about, outside of the comfort zone. Some of the people that learn the absolute most from us are the namby-pamby, new age, love and lighters, because we are so outside of their comfort zone. The stuff that we come out with, they would never in a million years have contemplated or thought about themselves, because they want to keep themselves in a cushy thing. This idea, this concept of why are there so many people out there that seem to be completely unable to use magic in their own lives because they're a complete fucking shambles, and yet they're willing to charge obscene amounts of money sometimes to fix other people's lives. When we talk about that and break that down, a lot of people would say, oh, that's very rude. Think of the people. That's not very nice. How can you dare pick on someone like that? That person's going through such trouble. It's not very nice. It's like, yes, but there's a fucking point to be made there. And do you know what? This is the point. Solve the reason for that. Don't be the person that assumes, oh, well, they're only doing it because obviously they can't help themselves, because that's not how it works. That's not how it works, Liam. That's not how it works, Chris. I was told by great Aunt Jemima, she was great. She was famous for a cunning woman, wise woman. She could cure all sorts of people, but she was blind. She could not see. And, she always told me that she couldn't help herself. And yet there are people out there that can. So we need to have these discussions that make people uncomfortable. And at the end
Those
of the
are
day,
bad people, Liam.
We need to use humor.
Bad people take it. Bad people take things from other people.
Bad people take things from other people.
No.
Do they? Don't good things also take things from other people? I'm pretty sure there are some militant vegans that break in and steal people's sheep only to release them in the wild so they get eaten by, well, foxes and wolves and such. That's happened a number of times now. It's indulgence, Chris, is what it is. I think it's indulgence.
Well, the polecat is only a problem in the UK due to people releasing it from various different furring relationships, liberating them, not considering the outer ecosystem that already exists outside of those locked cages. But anyway, let's not talk about Peter. The
occult world is a very dangerous world. The world in general is a very dangerous world. Okay, and creation is fucking dangerous. It takes strength to be able to navigate. It takes cunning and smarts to be able to navigate from it. A lot of people make a big mistake, which is, if I huddle up in the warm and lock the door and don't ever go and venture out, I'll be safe. Which most of the time that is the case, because you're not interacting with anyone. You're not pushing yourselves out there. You're not doing any real actual work. You're not walking the streets at night, so you're less likely to find an attacker. But don't for 1 second think that you locking that front door and huddling up in front of the fire does not mean that someone can burst through with a gun and shoot you. and get away with it because they can. And I'm talking about that from an occult perspective, obviously, because these new agey fucking love and light, just surrounding myself full of positive energy, that just means that you don't taste very nice. It doesn't stop a predator from coming along and eating you if it's hungry and it wants to for the fun of it. There's a big problem. Strength comes from, to a certain extent, which is what a lot of these new age types say, strength in diversity. Yes, strength in diversity. Not strength in, let's get rid of everyone that's different from us and our opinions. I'm pretty sure that's the sort of people that you're campaigning against and going on about. No, because I'm morally right and they're not. I see. Comes down to that. Where then we've got these grey occultists like ourselves. I know we might be wearing somewhat dark clothes, but this is a memorial episode, is to show fucking respect, right? The people that dwell within the light and the dark in a nice, perfect mixture of both, understand and see both sides. We try to see both sides of the equation as opposed to someone that already just assumes they fucking know everything. And I think we're accused of being big-headed sometimes, but it's the old ego thing, isn't it? Which is both necessary and also can be something that you need to get over. It can be an obstacle sometimes. But don't ever let them tell you that you should shed your ego. Very often people that want you to do that are cult leaders. And funnily enough, what do a lot of these cult leaders want? They want you to be a submissive little bitch. Speaking of cult center,
Moss Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Cautiousness is something we've talked about before, hasn't it? With advice we've given into washing out for practitioners and such that may be looking to promise you certain things, but maybe their intentions is somewhat sinister. I think there are some people out there that think that our intentions, Mr. Chris, are somewhat sinister. What would you say to that?
I would probably say if it was sinister we were going for, you'd all be dead.
Well, it depends. There are many forms of sinister.
So
I've always said that's probably a good thing. I've always said that things turn into a cult when people think that they can truly trust you. The cult leader, they're all in love with the cult leader, right? All these creepy weirdos, they're in love with the cult leader. It's never a good thing. And to be fair, being the positions that we're in, teaching magic and stuff, there's a lot of people out there that come from really fucked up backgrounds that are just begging for someone to take the power from them and give their power over to someone else so that they can be a submissive little bitch, right? The way we deal with those people is that we push them away. We make sure that we are not trustworthy. We have to be, to a certain extent, untrustworthy in order to be trustworthy, I think. How does that work? Is that a paradox? I don't know, Chris. Would that be classed as a paradox or not? I know it's completely logical. Are you in mourning? You need to get the old rosary beads out.
maybe.
Or are you doing a tarot reading or something?
You're funny.
I know. Have you mislaid something?
My marbles,
your keys or something, your marbles maybe. One of the screws in your loose one of your screws in your head came loose and fell out of the air, and you're now doing a tarot reading to figure out whereist thou screw, whereist thou nut. I think thou'st elude me. It's always in the last place one looks, I find.
I was mainly thinking this episode has turned far too educational.
Oh, fucking hell. Right,
and then we are not being Fausty enough. But I kind of feel like it's appropriate to kind of balance out the episode that this is a sequel to.
Right.
But at the same
then.
We were too Fausty on that occasion, picking on the Bagginses. being, interfered with by a succubus, apparently. But, I think it's been good in the sense that we kind of are going back to what we always do, which is equally and nefariously hit everybody with the issue, rather than picking on a particular group, which I don't think we ever really do maliciously. We're just trying to highlight the hypocrisy, obvious normally, and the incompetence of those particular groups.
Yeah.
And
the druids are just as incompetent. The ceremonial magicians very often are just as incompetent. It's not just that it's an idea of there's one path that's better than the others. There's a lot of incompetent post-Celtic traditional witches out there, isn't there? It's about the person, the character of the person, and the individual practitioner. They, every now and then, someone comes along that is truly great at magic. And they come from all these different backgrounds. It's not like there's just one that all of the good ones come from.
No. And the main reason that we get offended by the fact that people are constantly like Lady Snake are the sorts of people that get the airtime, I guess, and make the rest of us look bad, is what tends to be the problem. I've got no problem with somebody else taking the limelight all the time. Yes, please go do it. But when all they show is this poncy, velvet covered marshmallow behavior, I'm gonna get a bit, stressy about it. And then there'll be people out there going, well, why do you watch it then, Chris? I go, well, because Liam makes me, because he finds it entertaining.
No, I get the messages. Oh, you need to do an episode on Ghost Adventures, or oh, you need to do an episode on this, or you need to do an episode on that, and we take on board what our lovely patrons tell us they want content about. Yeah,
definitely.
So
we only give you what you want.
Yeah, it's up to you to tell us the sort of content that you like. Some people love the fact that we do the podcast. Some people can't fucking stand it. Other people like the spell casting videos and such. Other people just want to listen to me or Chris ramble on about something, on an occult rambling of some description. And then other people just like the memes. They just stay for the memes, I guess, Chris, don't they?
So, we give the people what they want.
Yeah. Give the people what they want.
Circuses.
This is but some great circus, isn't it?
And I still believe that Lady Snake will give us entertainment for a very long time, regardless of the fact that she's gone.
Do you not think that we should retire the memes because it would be distasteful? Or do you think they're just too educational?
I think they're too educational. I think if anything becomes her legacy, I think a cautionary tale is a really good way for her to be remembered.
So she's like the boy that cried wolf, then.
Definitely.
For her incompetence.
Yeah, and let's face it, we don't use her real name. We use her stage name, Lady Snake.
Well, I did actually use her real name, to be fair, earlier. Hopefully people won't rewind it and work out who she is. If you can actually pay or partly pay for the funeral, I believe, still on Kickstarter or whatever it is. What about this one? You say that there's education in it. What's educational about this?
Lady Snake, do 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 do. Lady Snake, do 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 do. Lady Snake.
What's educational about that, Chris?
That's not educational. That's being topical.
Okay, topical like a cream or ointment.
No, topical as in on topic.
On trend? Is it bang on trend?
On trend. Lady Snake to do. Is a reflection of
the times we live in.
The times we live in. And the closest that we do to memeing, really, I guess.
I have to say, I think it was brilliant for us to add these video memes to the second season. Who knows what we'll come up with for a potential third season, if there is one ever. Who knows?
Well, it depends. They'll have to cry out for it more and more, won't they?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we'll just make different content instead. We can't do this all the time. There's too much other content to get out there. How would we find all that time to slag off really bad written books like you do so well? You know, like these things need to happen.
Someone's got to do it, Chris.
Give the people what they want, and what they want is, you know, Fausty in all of its forms, not just Fausty Witches.
Just from Faustiness in general. Faustiness along the lines of something occult related, ideally. But I mean, they're just happy with plain old Faustiness and bitching, I think.
Right. So this one isn't kind of a live one because we've had to record it to replace it. So they'll get it when it happens. So what we're going to do about the question segment, because normally about now, this is where they'd all get a bit brave and start either asking us questions that are relevant or questions that are completely irrelevant. But they ask them nonetheless. So this kind of last bit is normally us answering questions they will have asked. So do we assume the questions they will ask and talk about random shit? Or are we expecting them to write lots of questions in the comment section underneath this video when it comes out, and we'll answer them then? And
that sounds like an awful lot of work.
I know. That's why I'm kind of hoping you're going to vote for the let's talk random shit and answer questions we feel they would have asked if they were listening. I think
we need to go on and find the most dumb questions and ask those. Here we go. moodymoons.com. 7 common questions about witchcraft answered.
Okay.
Can anyone be a witch, Mr. Chris?
Oh dear, we're going this low in the bottom of the barrel.
Why not?
Okay. Yes, anybody can be a witch. Not everyone can be a good witch, but most people can be a witch, yes. There's no reason why you could not.
Moody Moon says yes. There is a little magic in all of us.
Ugh, that makes me feel physically sick.
Never let anyone tell you that you need to be a certain heritage or born into a tradition of witchcraft in order to learn. I think we agree with the Moody Witch. Right.
Yes, but we're not going to say it in a vomit-inducing way like she just did.
Right. Next question. Do spells really work?
If you know what you're doing, yeah. Follow my triangle.
Ooh, right. So this one puts, this is a tricky one. It kind of depends how you expect them to work.
Oh,
if it sounds
absurd
intention when they're saying it out loud, it probably is. The ways in which this happens are often subtle, barely perceivable, and easy to take yourself out of. Right, okay.
I don't like Moody Witches.
Here's the good one. So they've also put in this paragraph, they rarely go as planned. The universe has a pretty twisted sense of humor. I get the impression this person probably isn't very good at magic because, yes, things don't necessarily always plan out perfectly, but then that's due to inexperience. And when you get more experience, it's like if you ever watch someone bake for the first time, like that show we both like. What is it called on Netflix? Nailed it. Yeah, they can't fucking bake for shit, can they?
Well, they try. They make up with effort.
Eventually, with practice, one can. I would imagine this Moody one needs some more practice, if I'm honest. But there we go. Let's move on to the next question.
I must say that this is kind of a big one of my problems with modern witchcraft, really, is the people answering the questions are normally beginners.
Yes.
Are you qualified to be answering those questions yet?
Yeah.
But hopefully, you would hope people would realise from the tone and the answer they get that this person is inexperienced. But I'm not sure that's normally what happens. I think they believe them.
Is witchcraft evil?
Yes.
Right. They've put no, of
Oh.
course not inherently anyway. In fact, you probably practice some form of witchcraft without even knowing it. Ever carried a rabbit's foot? Blah, 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 blah. Did your grandmother cook something funky smelling home remedy to cure a cold? Blah, 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 blah. Have you ever practiced meditation? Blah, 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 blah. I'm pretty sure that it's going a little bit to, I think that they're talking about generic magic, and I don't know. Originally, witchcraft just meant baneful evil magic. You know, I mean, there is, if anything, an argument as to say, which some people would say, well, if you're not doing bad magic, you can't call yourself a witch, which we would also disagree with, obviously, because words change and history moves on. But there was a time way back in the day, the good old days, when you really did have to do bad things to be classed as a witch, and no one really wanted to be called a witch, even people that did bad things. Next question. Help! A witch says she's cursed me. What should I do?
Cry.
Okay.
Because you're stupid.
Right. First of all, on behalf of the pagan community, I'm sorry you ran into one of these idiots. Most of us find this behavior profoundly embarrassing. Rest assured, 99% of the time, these people are either frauds or lunatics or both. I mean, I don't think we disagree with that. A lot of people that accuse, that come to us and say either we've cursed them or claim to be cursed, a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are just, well, not very...
misguided fools.
They're misguided fools, yes. But then every now and then something comes along and they are fucked up.
Really fucked. But those ones are good because I quite enjoy the momentous fuck ups that some people do.
I'm liking
very interesting.
My advice is ignore it, recognize it for the stupidity it is, and move on. Do not engage. If the
she's one of those that probably believes in curses only have power if you believe in them.
Yeah, that's bullshit. I normally only curse people that don't believe, in fact, because most of the people that do believe know better than to fuck about with me. If the person in question continues to pursue or harass you, treat it as if it would any form of harassment. Document anything you can document. Save any harassing emails or phone calls, or need be called the police. I mean, for fuck's sake, this person clearly is a beginner. I mean, you would do magic. If you had magic, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you had magic and you were powerful, you could deal with that really easily. I mean, it would be easier just to do some magic to fix the situation than having to fucking deal with authorities, for fuck's sake. I mean, they're incompetent enough most of the time. Clearly, this person isn't really a witch who's answering these. But in reality, I think that it's really very fucking simple. If someone comes to you, or if someone come to us, Chris, as it's happened many a times before, and said, I'm cursed, we would first listen to them and say, okay, why do you think that? We would then analyze and listen to why they think that is and think, okay, right, yes, I understand. You cannot get pregnant, and some gypsy still told you that you never would because you upset her. She cursed you with something and is playing on your mind, and you're latching onto it and you're thinking something about that. We would then take that and we think, okay, let's have a look. Let's use some good old-fashioned magical diagnostics and see if there's energy attached to you that could be messing with that system of reproduction or whatever. You know, if you've got bad luck or something like that, let's see if there's energy attached to you that's going to deal with that kind of thing. All right? Or is it just in the mind? Is it just the fact that you think that you're unlucky, therefore it's a self-fulfilling prophecy or fantasy? Potentially it could be a fantasy because you might get off on it. Who knows? Can you be a Christian and a witch? Next question.
Yes, there are lots of Christian witches. They're called Catholics.
Chris, you went there. Right, they're put. Who are you asking? Well, obviously, they're asking you. Fucking idiot. If you're asking me, yeah, I welcome you to the craft. I respect your Christian faith, and I absolutely believe you can honor it and still practice magic? I would say yes. I would say that you can be a Christian and be a witch, because so many people from the past that were accused of witchcraft and found guilty under a court of law, which kind of is the best way of deciding whether something is or isn't something. I mean, the law, whether it is or isn't. If I kill someone and get away with it, and the law says, no, you did not kill that person, Liam, as far as everyone's concerned, I did not kill them. If they put me in prison for a crime I did not commit, so they said, found me guilty of killing someone when I did not, I was framed, then legally speaking, I did. The records will indicate that I did.
Ultimately, there are some very impressive Abrahamics, religious Abrahamics that have got great careers as witches and occultists. Look at that Jesus guy. He was very good at the whole turning water into wine and shit like that. And that's alchemy at best. Bartending very well.
Magical bartending is an underrated skill. It should be in every beginner witchcraft book, methinks. Last question. I'm interested in beginning a magical practice. Where should I start?
Doing something. I'd say go for a walk.
You would say go for a walk, but then you say that to everyone, including people you don't like, and I think that's just a nicer way of saying fuck off, isn't it? I'll go for a walk. You say that all the time to me. Yeah, I do.
I think you should go for a walk.
Be
anywhere that's not here.
They've put, where would you start? So they say, wherever you want, pick a subject that interests you. Maybe you feel drawn to tarot cards, or you want to learn more about how to set up an altar. Start there. Let your practice evolve as you evolve. Or go for the broad overview and pick up a 101 book on witchcraft. Here are some more common. The Green Witch. Oh my gosh. Modern Guide to Witch. Oh my god. Wiccan Herbal Magic. Oh my god, no. If you want to learn herbal cards, don't learn it from a book like that. They'll fucking kill you. The House Witch. A Year and a Day. Oh my god. What is
I don't think any. Is there a book on there that wasn't written in the last 5 years out of interest? Because those all sound like frightfully modern. Most of those sound like they've been written in the last 5 to 10 years.
What's the best advice we can give someone in about 2 minutes about starting a path in witchcraft? I mean, normally with most things, if they wanted to learn textiles, they would go and, maybe go and try doing some knitting in a knitting group, maybe try and get some patterns, do some sewing or some crocheting or something like that. You don't know what you like. You just know you kind of like the idea of fabrics and shite, right? Logically, I would think of it like that. I would think of it, okay, what craft and things do I understand? Oh, right, okay, I'm a tradesperson. How did I learn that? How did I get to learn that? How did I navigate that path? Doctor, how would they navigate that? Someone is interested in cooking, how would you navigate that? Because the very practical things are normally what you're wanting to go for. Just sticking with cooking, how do you learn witchcraft to start off with? Or how do you learn cooking to start off with? Most of the time is necessity, because we all got to eat every day. So maybe start learning a little bit about what the skills you currently have, which people don't think about that. People think, I don't know anything about magic. I know fuck all. It's like, well, think about something that you can do or can't do or have an interest in, potentially, is what they're saying. But I think that everyone's capable of something, and a lot of the things that people are already capable of, they don't know. Don't know. What do you think? Is there a go-to? Join the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon?
The first thing is try and actually follow up with your obvious interest, which in some ways is kind of where she starts. It's just where she ends up that's the problem. In her answer is we'll go and look at those things. So, yes, there are lots of books out there, but if you want to learn about plants because you want to, you feel drawn to working with plants, don't find a herbal correspondence book. Go and buy a book on herbs, so that you actually learn a bit more about herbs. And then you're kind of thinking, oh, okay, well, if I've got that, then maybe I need to spend some extra time with the herbs that I do like. Think about the herbs that you don't like, or why don't you like them? Is it the flavour that you don't like, the smell? Like what turns you on and off about those individual herbs or flowers or weeds or whatever it is you want to look at? So, start where you mean to look. If you have a natural interest in kind of scents and making lotions and potions at home, then start with learning a bit more about essential oils. God forbid, go and have a look at some aromatherapy books and kind of go, oh, okay, how do these work? Well, at the very least, you'll learn something about the, blood-brain barrier or something like that actually has an interest about going, how does this chemical interact with one's body? What flavors do what things according to the books. You're going to find more out by going, actually, I want to learn more about trees. You're going to learn more about trees from a carpenter or a green woodworker than you're going to learn from reading a book called Magic and Trees. Because at the very best, you're going to get a book that's about folklore. Now, folklore is a good place to start if that's what you've got an interest in. Learning about your local trees or your local spirits that people have written about. Go and explore one. In some ways, going full circle to what this original Fausty started about, was ghost adventures. That's not a bad place to start if you've got an interest in local legends. Go and find out, visit those places. How do they make you feel? What can you see?
I would say, if you want to learn to cook, you ask Mummy and Daddy, Mummy and Daddy, can I help you make the tea? If you want to understand and you think, I think I quite like this garden thing, I want to be able to learn, how to garden, how it works. Grandma, can I help you do the gardening? Yes. You want to learn aromatherapy? Oh, can I, show me some aromatherapy? You do aromatherapy. Explain me some of the basics. Show me how it is, how it works. What's that? I don't drink the essential oils? Fucking hell, I was thinking that you drank them. I've learned something already. That's brilliant. I've learned something already that if I actually decided to experiment on myself, I'd probably have fucked myself up there, wouldn't I? But there we go. It's things like that watching. They're one of the big things, like people join groups and moots and stuff like that. And I find those people, they really don't learn very quickly. Because what they do is they learn by trying to interact with online witches or even in-person witches. And what they do is ask them questions. But they don't learn anything from that because A, they don't know what questions to ask, and B, when they do ask a question, they don't have anything to apply it. I think if you were to go to a cookery class or something like that, that's structured. They are teaching you how to prepare something. If you watch someone cooking and ask questions, you're watching them do it. If you were to interview a chef, sit down face to face, not do any cooking, and say, look, I've heard that you use pots and pans. Is that right? Do you actually use pots and pans? Because then there's this thing called a microwave someone talked about. I mean, it is as fucking stupid as that. Imagine not knowing how to cook, all of these kitchen implements, all of these various things, types of meals, baking, pressure cooking, all of that. It's overwhelming. From a magical perspective, that's the same thing. People that read, people that ask questions, they just get overwhelmed with so many different types. Go and ask a fucking pastry chef what they do, and then go and ask someone that works in a soup kitchen making homeless people meals. It's going to be very, 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 very different, but you're taking it in and thinking, wait a minute, so I need to be able to bake and I also need to be able to do this, and so what's the easiest thing to do? Oh, well, I think cupcakes are very easy. You would say that you're a fucking baker, mate.
Yeah. I think everything we've just said can be baked down, can be kind of boiled down. See what I did there? About to one sentence, which is ask questions and question the answer,
and then go and do something.
I think it comes down to the fact that we don't say don't read books. What we do say is read books and question what's in there and do something about it. So, you know, read as much as you like, as long as you're also doing just as much and more. And that's kind of where it always boils down to for us, is we've not got a problem with you reading bad books, but you can't believe everything that you read until you've tested it out. So if you're not testing it out, then you're just believing what somebody else thinks about magic. That's not you learning anything. That's you regurgitating what somebody else has done. It's the main reason that we hate doing how-to videos, because all you'll do is follow what we did. You don't learn anything by just following what we did. So, but yeah, I think we're over time. We ran over, Liam.
Goodbye, everyone. And, you know, God rest the soul of God and Goddess, rest the soul of Lady Snake. May she be protected in the afterlife from feistiness and, you know, soul snatchers and shit.
In the name of the God and Goddess, please protect Lady Snake.